Hey future radiographers! In our last video, we uncovered a secret power in selecting exposure factors which we call the 15% KVP rule. And I remembered promising to have a discussion about that in another video. Well, this is it. So today we dive into what this 15% KVP rule is all about, when is it used, what are its limitations, what do you do when even the 15% KVP rule fails. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. What is this 15% KVP rule? Well, it is a rule that is used in selecting exposure factors, and it states that if you increase your KVP by 15%, you are expected to halve your MAS. And in the same vein, if you reduce your KVP by 15%, you are expected to double your MAS to achieve the same image quality or density as using initial exposure factors. Simple math, right? But a powerful impact in image production. Let's talk a bit about the physics behind this rule. KVP as a value affects both the quantity and the penetration or the quality of the X-ray beam. In fact, the quantity or intensity of X-rays produced is roughly proportional to a square of its KVP. Also, the penetration is considered to be proportional to a cube of the same kilovoltage. So that 15% increase is not small. It nearly doubles the exposure to the detector. Think of KVP as the pressure in a water hose or a fire hose, and the MAS as the quantity of water required to carry out the job. If you increase the pressure in the hose, which in this instance is the KV, you do not require much water to get the job done. Let's do a quick math. So let's say normally I'd use an exposure factor of 80 kVp on 25 MAS to achieve a good quality chest x-ray. With the 15% kVp rule, however, the kV now becomes the initial 80 kV plus a 15% of the 80 kV, which in this instance will be 12 kilovoltage, giving a total of 92 kVp. The original MAS, on the other hand, being 25, now becomes half of that, making it 12.5, half of the MAS. So now the new exposure factors become 92 kV on 12 MAS, an increase in the kV and a halving of the MAS. For quick mental calculations in clinical settings, a change of approximately 10 kVp is considered a rough equivalent to the 15% increase. This provides a convenient rule of thumb for rapid adjustments. So in the instance we gave, instead of the 92, you can just add a value of 10 to the 80 so that you don't have to do the arithmetic of what is the 15% of a kV you're using. You can just add 10 for ease of calculation, and then it becomes 90 on the 12.5 MAS. So why does this rule even matter? Well, for starters, this rule isn't just academic. It has real-world implications, such as reduction in patient dose. Higher kV, lesser MAS means less dose to the patient, a ladder principle, as low as reasonably achievable. The image quality is also not left behind. Less MAS means less exposure time. Less exposure time translates to fewer motion artifacts, which will lead to a sharper image. This is usually perfect for imaging areas like the chest or Wrigley patients that are unstable. Furthermore, lower MAS means less heat and a better lifespan for the tube, improving the tube health of your X-ray machine. These all sound great, right? But like every other great thing, the 15% KVP rule also comes with its own trade-offs. The first is the issue of the image contrast. With higher kV, there is a flattening out of the contrast, making tiny tissue differences hard to spot. Scatter radiation comes next. With increase in kV comes an increase in the quantity of scatter or secondary radiation, which forms an unwanted density on the image, further reducing the contrast of the image. Hence the need for grids and collimation for such exposures. It is also not accurate outside the optimal KVP range of 60 to 90 kilovoltage. Below 60 kV, any slight increase in the kilovoltage significantly affects the image density, not in accordance to the 15% rule. Above 90 kV, on the other hand, also means excessively high kilovoltage that burns out tissue differences and flattens out the contrast. It also does not apply to people with unusual body types. For example, well-built muscular athletes or frail elders. In such patients, a reduction or an increase in the kilovoltage, as the case may apply, would require a similar increase or decrease in MAS to achieve the required image density. So when do we use the 15% rule? What are its general applications? The 15% KVP rule can be used to keep the dose as low as reasonably achievable, especially in pediatric cases, in uncooperative patients to reduce the exposure time and reduce the chances of having motion artifact, in low-powered X-ray machines to achieve good image quality even with MAS limits, and also to extend the tube life. A lesser MAS means less heating, so better lifespan for the X-ray tube. So does this rule have any impact on the digital systems we have today? From the discussion so far, the aim of the 15% KVP rule is to obtain a good image quality of sufficient density and contrast with as low as reasonably achievable exposure factors. In today's digital world of radiography, density, brightness, and contrast can be adjusted post-exposure, what we call post-processing. So does this 15% KVP rule still apply? You still need adequate penetration and low noise in the raw data for the computer to form the image. The computer cannot enhance what is not there, because as we all know, the computer is GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Therefore, always aim for proper exposure factors to ensure adequate signal and detail. Now, how do we become 15% KVP rule ninjas? Always start with the optimal KVP for the body part. You can now use the rule to fine-tune your exposure factors, not to fine-tune a rough guess. The rule is not meant to fine-tune bad guesses. Always learn to balance your image contrast and penetration. An excessive penetration with very high KV can flatten out the contrast, so always balance the two. Remember to always use your anti-scatter grids and adequate collimation whenever you're increasing the KVP. Fundamentally, think critically. This rule is not a magic trick. It is a guide, so think patient-specific and adjust for body habitus. Also, in as much as you trust post-processing, do not completely rely on it. Always try to select the proper exposure factors for the body part. Finally, when the 15% KVP rule is used wisely, it protects your patient, sharpens your image, extends your tube lifespan, and increases your confidence as a radiographer behind the console. So the next time you're faced with a patient and an examination to carry out, think patient habitus, think exposure factors, then fine-tune your exposure factors with the 15% KVP rule if applicable, and then of course use your anti-scatter grids. If this was helpful, hit the like and subscribe button. Also drop your clinical questions and stories. I would love to read them in the comment section. Until next time, stay sharp, think critically, and always think Alara. It's bye for now.